So we will have Shelby Kennedy up here helping us with the awards. And we have the Outstanding Rancher Award. The Lee County Cowboy Hall of Fame Outstanding Rancher Award is presented each year to an individual, or in this case a couple, whose occupation is ranching and who is recognized as a business person with ethics, integrity, and honor. Jace, no, not Jace, Clayt Reed, Jace isn't here. Clayt is joining me to introduce this year's Ranch Award recipients, Lynn and Katie Medlin.
Thank you. I'm just pretty honored to get to introduce these people. I got to grow up around some really great ranchers and cowboys in this county, and I would say that Lynn would definitely be somebody that's taught me a lot growing up. And so I think it's just a pretty fitting for Lynn and Katie both to be getting this award. So if y'all want to come forward and accept, and up here. Yeah.
We'll get a picture of you with Shelby over there.
Well, I don't really want to talk either, but I do thank you for the award. And I think you could add one more to that. I think I may be the oldest rancher in the county. If I'm not, I'm pretty close. Carlene Johnson's older than I am. Only one I know of. I do appreciate I've gotten to the age and my vision has got to the point where the young son of mine that sits back there probably has to do more of it than anybody else. He and Manuel. If it wasn't for Manuel's been with me for 17 years, I think, and he absolutely knows the ranch better than Jeff or I either one, but Jeff knows it good too. And I appreciate them. I'm fortunate to have them around. And Katie got lots of other stuff she'd love to do, but she's a full-time chauffeur, and we never have slowed down going anywhere that we wanted to go. But she kind of looks at me sometimes and says, "Do we have to?" Anyway, thanks a lot for the award.
The Working Cowboy. The Working Cowboy Award is presented to an individual who is wage-earning cowboy, someone who exemplifies ability, dependability, and character, someone who is actively preserving the fast-fading cowboy way of life. Maggie Reed, will you please join us and introduce Mark Hicks?
I wanted a good story to tell on Mark, and I thought he's one of 4 brothers. I'll get a really good one. I'll get a bunch. And nobody wanted to write him out, and I thought maybe it was just because his brothers are really nice. And then Miss Pat Chappelle told me this morning that she went to church with Kay and Travis and all the boys whenever the boys were little, and she said every Sunday, here they'd come, single file like little soldiers, all 4 of them just marching in, and they'd march into the pew and they'd sit down, and she said they wouldn't so much as look at each other, not a toe out of line. And I thought, well, maybe I didn't get a good Mark story because his brothers are real nice, or maybe Miss Kay still has her bluff in on all of them. And they didn't want to rat him out, especially in front of his mother. So you're welcome, Mark. Lucky you. A lot of you in this room have probably worked with Mark, and if you have, you know that him being a cowboy is such an integral part of who he is. It's so natural to him. He's intuitive, and he always is exactly where he's supposed to be, doing what he's supposed to be doing. He knows how to do it all, and he's one of the most dependable, hardest working guys I know. I love getting to call him my neighbor, and I'm happy to present him with this award this year for Working Cowboy. Give him a hand.
Just like to say thank you to my parents for raising me the way they have, and thanks to all my neighbors for helping me develop my abilities, and love you all. Thank you.
Silver Concho Award. The Silver Concho Award is presented to a man, woman, or an animal not eligible for induction into the Hall of Fame, but who deserves to be remembered for their service throughout Lee County. It is a special recognition award that has been given to 43 men and women and to 3 animals. The 2018, oh, I didn't change the date, 2021, how about that? Silver Concho is presented this year and to a very deserving person and part of our community who has helped the Lee County Cowboy Hall of Fame in many ways. Here to make the presentation of this year's Silver Concho Award is NMJC Board President, Pat Chappelle.
Number one, you never give a mic to a politician. So this is going to take a little longer to talk about Jim Davis. But my job is easy because everybody knows Jim Davis. So it's Jim Davis, it's Jimmy Davis, but it's never James Davis. And it's never James Alvin Davis. So I want you to remember that. Jim is one of 8 children. And every summer he would pack his bag the last day of school, and one of his ranchers that lived around him would pick him up and keep him for 3 months. Paid him $100 a month. And I know they fed him well. So Jim worked for several ranchers, and I'm going to mention a couple of them. And that is George Weir and Bert, is it Steeler or Stella? And the one I really loved was Babe Matkins, I'm sorry. Anyway, he said one year when Jim was 13, he had worked there from 8 to 19, he said, Jim, I'm going to pay you $5 a day, which was a raise, if you'll work for me this summer. And Jim said, okay. Well, Babe, I love that name, Babe had a ranch, but he also had 2 businesses. And remember now, Jim is 13. Babe needed a driver. Now we don't know why. It could have been connected to his 2 businesses. He owned one bar and then he owned another bar. So he would get Jim to get up in the morning, pick him up at 10 o'clock and drive him to the first bar. And I said, well, did you go anywhere? Did you do anything? This is 1956, let me tell you. There was no telephones. There were no iPads. There was no Sudoku. I don't know what Jim did. I said, what did you do all this time? He said, well, I drank a lot of Cokes. And I thought to myself, Jim sat over there in the corner. You see this 13-year-old boy in the bar sitting in the corner because he had to stay there because he was the driver. And he had to stay there, and I thought, he's watching people. And I bet he did, and that was part of his education, wasn't it? Yeah, I think his family knows that. He watched a lot of people. Well, at 2 o'clock, they left the first bar and took a little break. I don't know if they ate or what, but then they went to the second bar. And they stayed there till 10 or 11 at night. Well, that was not, he only did that 1 year. He didn't like that. He missed the ranch and he wanted to be there. Jim went ahead and finished high school, and when he did, the 4 ranchers that worked him during the years paid his tuition for him to go to night school at New Mexico State. And the ranch was there in Carlsbad. When Jim was 21, he went to work for Russ Tractor. All of you know that's a big Caterpillar company. And he worked for them until, he's already saying, oh my God, it's just talking. Anyway, he worked for them for 28 years. He moved to Farmington. He worked in all those places that we go on vacation, like Pagosa Springs, Cortez, Moab, Utah, Chalma, Red River, Santa Fe, Taos, Gallup. But he came home when he got the chance. He said, I miss Lee County, and he came home. I'm going to tell you one thing before I tell you about the Cowboy Hall of Fame business. And Steve McCleary over here, Dr. McCleary, will vouch for him and give you some examples if you want. But he said Jim has always helped the college and always loved the college, apart from the museum. But in 1978, Tuffy Cooper walked in to Jim's office and said, Jim, I've got something that you can't resist, and you're going to love doing it. And all I need you to do is write me a check. And so he did. Jim wrote him a check, and Jim became a charter member of the Lee County Cowboy Hall of Fame. And I have his card here. And then years later, he became a lifetime member at Cowboy Hall of Fame. And the thing that impressed me was they're kind of ragged, and Jim pulled them out of his wallet, and he's carried them all these years, and I think that's pretty neat. So, in 2004, Kelly Myers, you're here? Where are you, Kelly? Kelly used to buy the rifles for the fair raffle, and in 2004, he went off the board. Well, Jim Davis started buying the rifles and has bought the rifles ever since. He served on the board several times. He would serve his term, and then he'd serve his second term, and then he'd lay out a while, and pretty soon the board would call him back. So it's really New Mexico Junior College, it's really the Cowboy Hall of Fame, the board and the staff and me that feel it's an honor and a privilege to recognize Jim Davis. I'm getting Jim's cards right now.
You can, if you want to, you can stay here.
Well, they caught me by surprise. I never thought I would be awarded this award or any award in the Hall of Fame. Anyway, it surprised me when they gave me a call and told me that I would be the recipient of the Silver Concho. And I appreciate it. Made a lot of friends, met a lot of people, and it's just one big family. And I appreciate everyone, and hope it continues on and go from there. I thank you very much.
Induction into the Lee County Cowboy Hall of Fame is given annually to no more than 3 men and or women who have roots in Lee County and who have distinguished themselves in the rodeo world. or who have contributed to the area's ranching industry. To date, more than 100 outstanding individuals have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. The 2020 inductees didn't get properly acknowledged last year because we weren't able to have the banquet. So we are happy to celebrate them tonight along with this year's inductees. We are honored to have the families and friends of both the 2020 and 2021 inductees. Our special thanks needs to be voiced to the Board of Directors of the Hall of Fame for the time and effort to seek nominations, and to the membership for their election of our recipients. Here to present our first 2020 inductee is David Minton.
Pat, you stole our program up here. We need our program back. You did. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm here to introduce the fellow that nominated Clara Fowler for this honor. Clara was quite an institution around Hobbs for a lot of years. Came here, a lot of people don't know she actually homesteaded. She got a patent of her own and went right on up through life and ended up being quite a cowwoman. But Bobby was telling me just earlier that he had actually met Clara Fowler, and that's why he's been trying so hard to get her on the Cowboy Hall of Fame. But he told me that he was 7 years old when he met her, which means that was probably about 14 years after statehood. But I kind of had a long thing to say, but I got to thinking, as long-winded as Bobby's going to be, I better just kind of sit down and let him have it. So, Bobby Cox, come on up here.
Let's get a picture first, guys.
With him?
I don't want to blank. I'm so sorry. 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to take one more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
I have to have a cheat sheet. But I did. I met Clara Fowler 1955. I was 7 years old, and her ranch foreman was Charlie Browder. And Charlie's birthday was the day after mine. And she come out to take him and his wife, Rachel, to eat dinner. And they come past our house, and we was living on City Service Lane, which was on Clara's property. And Charlie said, "That little boy's birthday's today." And they went to town and they come back by the house and stopped. Y'all remember those little peanut boxes, the red boxes that had a nickel, dime, or a quarter in them? And I think they were called Comanche peanuts. And there was a $20 bill inside of mine. But anyway, you've read your deal, but Miss Fowler, well, when I was on the board, Giles Lee asked me, he said, "Can you go back through the files and find some nominees that were not voted in, and let's re-nominate?" So I did, and I found Lee Graben, Merle McNeil, and Charles C. Taylor. And he said, "Well, Charles C. Taylor, why isn't Clara Fowler involved?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, I'll look." I could not find anybody that knew anything about Clara Fowler. Well, then I got thinking about my good friend, or used to be, David Minton. And I got in touch with him, and he looked up a bunch of stuff, and he wrote me a letter. And it said, it described Clara as being a hardy pioneer type, showing that she started with the Roberts Community Homestead and built onto the land she later gathered. And I believe that. Clara Bradley was born April 25th, 1889, near Brady, Texas. Her mother passed away, and her dad let the two girls be adopted by the Fowler family. In 1910, the Fowlers moved to Lee County, and the two girls filed on some country out in the Roberts community, and their parents filed on the property just west of Hobbs. Well, Pascal died in 1911, so the two girls moved in with their mother and helped run both places. Clara's brother came out here from Brady to help her with the ranching, and then he passed away in 1929. Clara got ill in the early 40s, and Charlesia Taylor moved her in with her. Steve had passed away, and both women run each other's ranch from there. And the guys, and my brother-in-law Dalton Greben, who was the grandson to Walter Lee Greben, they called her Aunt Clara. But Ms. Clara Fowler died March 11th, 1983 at the age of 92 years old. I nominated Clara Bradley Flower for the 2020 Bronze Cowboy Award, and she won and deserves to be on the board, on the wall. And I'm honored to accept the award on her behalf. I want to thank all of those who voted for her, and I think she needs to be on the wall. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will move on to our next 2020 recipient, and here to tell you more about them is Clayton Reed.
Sylvester V.M. Chambers. Sylvester Chambers, also known as V.M., Vester, and Fesser, grew up in Texas during the time of the open range days. He worked breaking horses in the Indian Territory and is a cowboy on numerous trail drives and for the Sea Ranch on the Canadian River. At the age of 22, V.M. decided to further his second grade education, eventually earning a college degree. Making his way out west to the Llano Estacado, V.M. used his education and ranch hand abilities to cowboy or teach at the various locations he stopped. V.M. arrived at what is now Lee County in 1897. He filed on several claims and taught school at Murphy's Chapel, Midway, and Plainview. He was affectionately called Fesser by his pupils and friends. V.M. married Maddie Posern in 1913 and took 3 trips back and forth to Texas before moving his family to Lee County. In 1920, he bought 2 sections of land 3 miles north of Plainview. Within a few years, he bought more land and stopped teaching, stocking his land with sheep and cattle. VM had great pride in continuing to develop better strains of sheep and cattle. He often expressed himself on what he believed to be the wonderful future of Lee County and the many opportunities which could be available for future generations. He loved New Mexico and often remarked, "If we take care of the land will take care of us." He was a member of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association and the New Mexico Wool Growers Association. Although he spent most of his time ranching, he kept a lifelong interest in promoting better educational opportunities for the youth of Lee County. He was a promoter of the early day school bus for country children and encouraged and helped many students further their education. VM often said, "Opportunity may knock but once, and it is important to recognize when it's knocking and respond." VM believed in the dignity of an individual and was always willing to lend a hand. He was quick to perceive change in the social and economic environments and was able to adapt and succeed. As he grew older, the hardships of his early life became humorous conversation for young listeners, told with his special sense of humor. The latter part of his life were years of contentment. The trip out west had been worthwhile, and he had done his part to make it that way. And accepting the award for VM is his great-grandson, Stormfield.
Thank you all very much for letting us have this victory lap in 2020 to come back and celebrate my great-grandfather. Kind of connect the dots for you a little bit. This was Matty Field's father. And the brand that my father, Dan, actually uses is the /VC, which stands for Vester Chambers, which is him. So there's a lot of history that goes in. And he kind of gets forgotten about since his daughters married the Field family and they ran on. And I'd like to see that the Chambers are getting their due here. So thank you so much for having us. And we're proud supporters of the Hall of Fame and will be for years to come. So thank you very much.
Congratulations to our 2020 inductees. Moving on to our 2021 inductees, Clayton Reed will once again join me for an introduction.
Okay. Tommy Charles Price was born in the family home north of Tatum, New Mexico. Being a grandson to Tatum pioneers, Mr. and Mrs. Russ Anderson, and was a lifelong Lee County rancher. He took great pride in his home and ranch, being in the family for over 100 years. He and Peggy J. Sullins were married on November 16, 1954. Tommy was a national champion high school bull rider, a national champion high school calf roper, and all-around cowboy runner-up to the National High School Rodeo Association. Tommy served numerous Lee County organizations throughout his life, including president of the National High School Rodeo Association, the New Mexico High School Association, Tatum, New Mexico School Board, and the Liberty National Bank Board, now the Western Commerce Bank. He was also a member of the Lee County Electric Cooperative Board and the New Mexico Livestock Association. A successful lifetime rancher, Tommy ran about 5,000 head of yearlings and about 400 cows on owned and leased land around the Tatum area. From Crossroads to north of Hobbs and from Cap Rock to north of Bronco, at the height of his career, Tommy would eat, breathe, and sleep cowboying throughout his life. He was an artist at working any class of cattle quickly and efficiently. Tommy was considered by many to be one of the best draggers in New Mexico. He was not only known for wearing out flankers in the Brandon pen, but his fun-loving personality and enthusiasm made the work fun for everyone. Tommy also loved anything related to the ranching lifestyle, like roping, sharing all his knowledge with anyone who wanted to learn. There were many people that grew up in town that never would have experienced the lifestyle if it wasn't for Tommy's heart for the traditions and patience to teach. He had a soft spot for troubled youth and took in many young adults and kids over the years, teaching them how to rope, cowboy, and work hard so they could have a better chance in life. Tommy's sentiment for Lee County's ranching heritage and the role he and his family had in it was most prominent in his last brag. He spoke of how privileged he was to reach the end of his life on the original homestead, and with his bed in the same place, in the same bedroom, in the same house that his granddaddy had. Here to accept the award on behalf of the family is Charlie Price.
Well, I'd just like to appreciate everybody who voted my dad in. I know they've been trying a long time to get him in it. I was glad all the family come. My brother couldn't make it, but just want to say it's an honor and I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Maggie Reed will be joining us for the introduction of our final inductee for the night. Come on.
I know, I was trying to decide, do I roast you right up front and then say all the nice stuff? And I think I'm going to, because maybe by the time I get through all the nice stuff, he'll forget all the other stuff I've said, but if you think of something, run up here and say it. I bet nearly everybody in the room has a pretty good Danny Berry story. I see a lot of nods, and I would like to speak with all of you after this. Now, whether they're all appropriate to say up here is something else, but I did hear a good one the other day, and even though it implicates somebody else in the room, I'm going to go ahead and share it because it is just classic Danny Berry. So, I heard through the grapevines that like 40-ish years ago, there was a team roping in Eunice, and a bunch of them were there. Danny, of course, was there. And they decide after it's over, they're going to load up and head to the San Simon, our place west of Eunice, and just have a little after party. And so they, 5 or 6 trucks and trailers, and they all get there. And do you think any of them had had a little bit to drink when they got there? Do you think any of them had maybe been like overserved a little when they got there? So somebody waits until everybody's good and preoccupied inside, and they go outside and start swapping horses out of trailers, just pulling all the horses out and putting them all back in the wrong trailers. So at the end of the night, no one's really in the state of mind to think, am I leaving with the horse that I came with? But they all get home and start unloading, and immediately it's like, that's not my horse. And so, of course, all these years, Danny's like, it wasn't me, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. And everyone who was there is like, it was you. This has your name written all over it. Until like 2 months ago at a birthday party, somebody else said, maybe it wasn't Danny, maybe it was me. And that somebody was his wife, Libby. And so now we're all in this situation of we've got to evaluate, investigate our Danny stories and find out, did Danny really do all this stuff that we're not in our heads, he did it, or did Libby do it and Danny took the fall? We've all been blaming Danny all this time for stuff he probably didn't do, right? No, that's probably the only one he didn't do. He did all the rest. But as many stories as there are of Danny's shenanigans, the list is long, Danny, but the list of ways that he has contributed to ranching and rodeo and the Western way of life is even longer. It's a very long list, and there's a lot of it written in your program, and that stuff doesn't even scratch the surface. all of us in this room owe him a debt of gratitude, and I'm so pleased to be able to welcome him as an inductee to the Hall of Fame. Come say 20 seconds worth of words, Danny.
Well, I'm glad she straightened that out because it was not me that did that. I've been telling them for 40 years it wasn't me. And it was Libby and her sister Mary Ann. Yes. And we finally let the cat out of the bag about a week ago, and so I'm glad you got it right. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to the board of directors. It's a true honor for me from the heart, and to be inducted with this bunch, and especially Tommy Price, my friend. And so I want you all to think about, like 43 years ago, we wouldn't be standing here and we wouldn't be enjoying this if someone didn't have a vision. And Jim, you know, I mean, Tuffy Cooper needs to be thanked over and over again to preserve the Western heritage of Lee County. And Lee County has a lot of history, and you all know that. And so them and the junior college, big time, standing behind the Lee County Cowboy Hall of Fame all these years is good. You're part of it. But I appreciate that. I want you to also think back 100 years ago to your families that came before you, the ones that endured. They came through the Depression, they came through the war, they came through droughts, and then they came through the good times. And without them doing that, we wouldn't be standing here today. And so remember that. And then there's one other thing you need to remember. There were good women with all of these families and all these men that helped them get through there. And so don't forget that the women helped the deal. And to this day, there is a living example of that sitting right there. I made one good decision in my life, and that was when I said yes when Libby asked me to marry her. Is that right? No, maybe that was not right either. I also, if I could, my family, would you mind standing? So everybody know who you are and everything. And then and also I appreciate the Hall of Fame with the Working Cowboy Awards, and I am honored. And the two guys I'm going to talk about are Bob Holt and Mark Hicks. And you've honored both of them as working cowboys, and I get to work beside them. Basically, maybe I don't say that right. I don't work, they work. They do it all and everything. But anyway, I'm going back a little ways, but all you ranchers know that we have neighbors. You know what neighbors are, and they come to help you no matter what, no matter when. They don't ask questions. And if I could, I'd like my neighbors to stand up, please. Those people are the best because they have more patience than anybody in the world put up with me. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for.
Congratulations to all of our well-deserving honorees tonight. Thank you so much, friends and family, for being here to celebrate them and their accomplishments.